Hello viewers, Super GT here on Forza Motorsport 7. Okay, so one make race, the Eagle Death Machine. The main idea of this video is to try to test the penalty system and see if it actually works, but we're not going to go about smacking people around like we have done in previous penalty video tests, as we get kind of smashed around. Forza 7 video confirmed, I suppose. The main thing I want to do here is just race properly and see if the penalty system works things out properly when you're racing properly. So of course in previous videos, as we've mentioned, it kind of works when you're smacking people about and obviously cutting corners. Yeah, it penalises you. But I want to get to a conclusion as to whether it works when you're trying to race properly. Of course, we've seen in Gran Turismo, when you race on the edge, race properly, sometimes, or quite a lot of the time, the penalty system adjudicates in a very bad way and just completely ruins the race sometimes, gives you a penalty you don't deserve, and it can ruin the racing. Of course it does act as a deterrent, so people try to avoid going off the track, try to avoid hitting each other in order to not get a penalty, so there is that bonus. But we're going to try to work out if, at this point here, is the penalty system in Forza working? Is it making the racing cleaner? Is it having an overall benefit to how clean and how good the racing is? Because that's, of course, the main idea, really. We want to have proper, clean races where people aren't absolutely sending each other every given opportunity. That's the ideal end point of all of this. Of course, this isn't sort of a final version. Forza 7 these days is kind of a test bed for Forza 8, if you like, as I go flying into the back of this guy and get myself a quarter of a second penalty. So it seems a little bit small, but the main thing I've noticed with the contact is if you go quite hard into the back of someone, you'll just get a quarter of a second. It's not that big of a penalty, but I think it does again decide if you've gained on them, if they've lost out big time, and on that occasion he didn't. I don't think he really lost out too much from that contact, so it wasn't too much of a harsh penalty. So it's good to battle out with some FRC players. LZR Racers, one of the quickest in the world, and somehow, well, I'll say somehow, but he's spun out. That's the reason I'm ahead of him. But it's probably not going to last too long, as I'm kind of all over the place here. This is the kind of thing I want to point out. So here we make contact, and it looks like I'm forcing him off. But because of the way our cars made contact, I was turning right the whole time, but my car wants to turn left because of the contact. It's a weird scenario. And it's things like that where you think, that could have been a penalty, even though it's kind of a weird situation. So you don't want the racing ruined by sort of excessive penalties, where sometimes it is just a racing incident. And unfortunately that's where Gran Turismo does go wrong sometimes, where it just hands things out way too often for things that probably should not be penalties. So looking up the inside of the final corner, it was good to battle with racers. Not that I'll ever really truly beat him in an FRC event, but it's always good to have a good race in online race. So let's move to the next one. So Road America in the Audi R8. This is more like it, a lot more grip, a lot more braking ability, a lot more traction compared to the previous race. So coming through the first corner, just run a little bit wide, and that's definitely beyond the white line. But on this occasion, it's not going to hand out a penalty, so I'm not sure about the thinking there. So can you extend sometimes, can you not? I don't know. Let's perhaps try it again on the next lap, but we'll see. So settling in to first place, into the second big braking zone on the lap, and we've gone way too deep as per usual. It's taken a while, it does take a while I think, to come back to Forza and just really get back truly up to speed. I would say my speed wasn't too bad on the whole, but it does take a while to really get back 100% of your speed, if you had any speed, that is, and maybe I didn't even have it in the first place. But we're doing okay here, starting on pole position and staying in first for now. So extended there, we went beyond the track limit and regained or we get a quarter of a second penalty. Okay, fair enough. And this is one of the main things we spoke about earlier, deterrence. Things to stop you from constantly running wide, things to stop you from constantly hitting each other. I would say that the racing is actually not too bad. We slate Forza for being an absolute mess, but over the course of this session of play, you actually see that the racing was actually pretty darn good. And especially at the front of the pack. In the middle, yes, it gets very difficult, especially when there's so many people in such a confined area. But on the whole, I would say the racing is actually fairly decent for a lot of the gameplay you're seeing in this video. Again, extending the final corner. So I'm not understanding why on one occasion I've got a quarter of a second, on that occasion I've got 1 1.25. Extending that time, and we get half a second. So I'm not sure about the consistency. I'm really not getting it. But the main thing really is don't extend, and therefore if you don't extend, then you definitely won't get a penalty. So that's the main thing I have to work towards, is just not extending at all, because I'm the only person in the top 4 who currently has a penalty, judging by the infographic on the left hand side of the screen, sliding through the apex there, under pressure again from racers who's right at out, cut the track, and even if he does stay right behind me to the line, I'm going to lose, of course, judging by the difference in the penalty time. So for those of you looking out for Shadow Realm entries over the course of this video, there's not too many. Actually, some pretty good racing. Well, there were a few in the first race, I'll give you that. But it was actually really good, really refreshing, and it was really refreshing to see some clean racing, and it really kind of brought back the reason why I love this game, because it can bring out some very good racing. It can do. A lot of the time it doesn't, but it can do. And on this occasion it did. Quite annoying when we hit these signboards. This is something that I really hope they change in the next game. These signboards just dished out across the circuit and just really affects the racing. Races just the outside, just going to run him narrow. Give him the space eventually. He goes up the inside. And we're going to go and try the cutback on the way out. He does extend slightly. Is he going to get a penalty? Yes, he has a 1 second penalty. We've got the inside though, so there's a nice little cutback on the exit. So we're going to retake him across the line. The final lap begins up to the final corner. Sorry, the first corner. What am I talking about? It's the first corner. On the inside, we're going to get the job done here. There's nothing we can do to really fight against that one. Collision, no penalty, as it perhaps should be. It should be no penalty, is what I mean there. As it's just a door-to-door contact. I get on the throttle a little bit too early. Go off onto the grass. Is that going to give me a penalty? Maybe I gained. Okay, I'm going to get a quarter of a second for that. I'm a bit surprised because I'm not sure I gained out of that. But again, a deterrent. Don't go on the grass and you won't get a penalty. Down towards turn number 3. On the outside goes Racers. Is he going to be able to pull that off? Not quite. Just slot back in ahead. He's made contact with Taxi. I'm not sure exactly how that one panned out. Well, it panned out by Racers going wide. I'm not sure how it got caused. Didn't quite look behind in time to see it. But it's okay for me. Later on in the lap, actually, I have a 2.5 second penalty. If I can get 2.5 seconds ahead or more than, I can still win this race. But coming through the final corner, I'm about 1.6, just to stay within track limits. 2 seconds ahead by the time I crossed the line is I almost still won that race. It says first, but I wasn't first. So on this occasion here, I'm just going to show you a clean first corner at Catalunya National, which is probably the rarest thing of all time. It probably wasn't clean behind us, admittedly. A bit of contact with Racers, but we get through okay. Going to go for the cutback through the second corner. 3 wide here, coming up the hill, all in the Porsche Cayman GT4. Is it going to be possible to go around here? We've got around the outside of Racers, up into second, so I'll take that. A little bit too late on the entry point there. Going to cut the second apex. How much of a penalty is that going to give me? 3/4 of a second. So my summary so far is that I do think the penalty system is fairly good. It just seems to have inconsistency, and I don't think it completely works when it comes to contact. But so far I would say that it is helping. it does mean that people try to be a little bit more careful, especially with the track limits, because especially through something like Yas Marina, people will just very easily just cut and get away with it. The thing you have to do is just be very strict with the track limit, because if you don't have a penalty system around Yas Marina, people are just going to cut a little bit more and a little bit more and just try and get away with as much as possible. And you just really need a strict, okay, don't go past this line and you won't get a penalty. It just needs to be like that, and thankfully the system being introduced, it does change the way that you have to play the game. And there is skill required, you know, trying to drive within the track limit as quickly as possible, but within the limit. So you have to really push as much as possible, but not too much so that you go wide or cut a corner. So trying to find that balance is quite a tricky thing. But I do like that, and it's good that that's in the game now. It's good that you have to try to find that balance rather than just go all out, cut some corners, get away with it. It doesn't matter. So hopefully in the next edition of the Forza Motorsport series, we'll see a proper comprehensive penalty system that really does work. This one does work so far. It's not perfect, but it's better than not having it, I would say. So people do try to race clean. Another thing though is that even though people did have penalties, I think a lot of people were just kind of ignoring it, and just, let's say I'm in the lead and I've got a 10-second penalty and someone's behind me with no seconds at all, I still try and defend against them, still want to win on track. So you can still carry on with the race, but you're just of course not going to win based on the penalty. But please do let me know your thoughts on this system. Let me know your thoughts if it works, if it doesn't. Do you think it improves the racing? And how should they improve it for Forza Motorsport 8? So this race is actually not one that I would have thought would be an amazing race, but as we've proven many times before, it is often the slower cars that make for very good races. I go a little bit too wide into turn 3. Races is just going to appear and poke his nose into the bottom of the screen. So we've caught up with the South African, who had a very good opening lap, but has lost out so far on lap number 2. Under pressure once again from racers, so even though I haven't really beaten him yet, it is good to just be in the ballpark of an FRC level player. Well, I did technically beat him at Road America, but I got the penalty, so I didn't. I didn't beat him. Into the hairpin at the bottom of the Nürburgring GP circuit on power quite late, and a little bit of kick of oversteer on the way through. Coming up to the Schumacher S, just taking the curb on the way in, I really do think that gives you a better angle to come through there, and it definitely is going to help me gain as we come up the hill towards the next chicane coming up. So just keeping racers behind, keeping them at bay for now. The South African goes semi-defensive into there, didn't really take the full width of the circuit on the way in, and again not going all the way in. There's no way I can lunge for it from there. Something they do need to change for the next game is the slipstream, because it does really settle down often, especially if you're in the same car as your opponent. There's nothing to differentiate yourself from them unless they make a mistake. You are often relying on mistakes in a lot of these races, and slipstream would help to promote overtaking. Through the chicane, that really wasn't a good line, and had a bad gear choice as well, poor momentum on the exit, so we were right on his tail, but we just lost out. And through the final corner, just getting stuck on that curb, well, not stuck, but the car gets a little bit loose, as Mr. Profit gets a 1.5 second penalty for just cutting that final chicane. He might have been pushed into it. I did touch him in the rear end, and that would have affected him. So again, that's the kind of thing that I'm really trying to explore over the course of this video, because I kind of pushed him into cutting that corner, and maybe that wasn't his fault, you know, that he cut the corner. Now it's very unlikely he's going to be able to win that race, or win this race, with a 1.5 second penalty, unless myself and racers smash into each other or get penalties ourselves. And it's that kind of thing I'm trying to work out, because of course, again, like we said at the start of the video, we've seen the penalty system. Yeah, okay, when you cut a corner and gain 12 places at Monza, or smack into someone from 200 miles an hour and they're going 2 miles an hour, then yeah, you're going to get penalised. But it's these sort of intricate moments that you do have to work out as well, is it going to ruin the racing when you're having a very good, close, intense race? And that's the main thing that they will certainly have to work out, especially if they're going to use this system in FRC. If the Forza Racing Championship is going to utilise the penalty system, it needs to work. It really needs to work for these little intricate scenarios. Okay, a really good exit out of the Schumacher S as the two guys in front went defensive, or went side by side, sorry, against each other. Looking for the move wasn't quite on. You do have to be very dedicated on the brakes to make sure you get the move fully done, but we don't on this occasion. A little bit slow off the turn onto the back straight, so we're sitting in an okay position here. So Racers is holed up behind the leader, who is again going defensive. So even though he's got that penalty, he still wants to finish first on the track. So it doesn't completely ruin the racing. People aren't just giving up knowing that they've got a penalty, which is good. Into the final corner, into the final chicane, sorry, and I just cut it a little bit too much. And I am going to get myself... Oh, no penalty, in fact. So I'm not sure exactly the consistency sometimes. But you do have to be very careful. Mr. Profit with a nice little cutback there as he comes through the final corner. It's going to be a drag race to the line between the two of them. Of course, Racers is going to win because he doesn't have a penalty, and he is going to win anyway because he has just edged ahead. And he comes across the line, and that was an amazing race. To be honest, I really enjoyed this session. It was actually really good. I had about 7-8 races, and I really enjoyed it, to be fair. But that's the end of this one. Let me know your thoughts as always. Let me know if you'd like to see more Forza Motorsport videos. And, of course, let me know your thoughts on the penalty system, whether or not it works, and how should they improve it for the next game. But that's it from me. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for the support on the channel, as always. Thank you, of course, to all the Patreon supporters, all of the channel members. Big shout out to all of you. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.